Okay, so our next speaker, Russ Wilson, his topic today is how does a small regenerative farm survive? You know, this is one of the questions that came up last year on our surveys, and I'm just putting that in to remind you, we do appreciate the surveys. It gives us ideas for topics the next year, things that we need to think about, but this is one that came up. Along with, marketing. A lot of people can produce and they know how to produce the foods and the meats and all that, but when it comes to marketing, that was a concern. So, Russ, thanks for being here again.
Oh, my pleasure. It's always great to be here. How does the small farm survive or thrive? You actually want to thrive. You want to be able to, at the end of the year, be able to put a bunch of money in the bank and put it away. If we look at a USDA study, it shows that 300 farms go out of business every week. 80% fail in the first 2 years, and 98% fail in the first 5 years. And the average age of the new farmer is 46 years old. I see a lot more younger folks getting into the farming industry, but I also see a lot of older folks getting into the farming industry as well. A lot of folks retire and they decide that in their retirement that's what they want to do is farm, so I think that's what's kind of driving that 46-year age of the average new farmer up. And there's nothing wrong with, retiring and having a small farm or a big farm for that matter. I've always talked about getting the inputs out of the farm. You can only take so many inputs out of your farm. So after you get all those inputs out, what can we put on the farm? Is your farm a ranch business? That's one thing you need to ask yourself. Oftentimes farms, a lot of folks consider their farms as hobby farms, and it's not a business. I've had a lot of businesses in my life. I used to be a farrier. I tended 350 head of horses, and that business was built pretty much solely on the word of mouth. I went and I beat on some doors of some hack stables actually, where they have 25 head of horses. I go in and shoe all those horses for them, and 8 weeks come along, none of them shoes would fall off, and the people would come in there with their own horses. They'd ask, well, who would you have do your horse's feet? And they'd say, here, this guy here has been doing them for me for a while and I haven't had any issues. He's doing quality work, and the word of mouth just spreads like crazy. So you can't solely rely on just word of mouth. I mean, there's a lot of other aspects that you have to in order to get business, but my farrier business, it was pretty much all word of mouth. Just in the beginning, I never even advertised. I never put any classified ads or anything like that out. I just went and knocked on some doors and said, hey, this is what I'm doing. And and what I've done in the farrier business, if I find a barn that has 20 horses, I'd say, let me do one of your horses for you. I'll do it for free. And the next thing you know, you're doing the whole barn. So quality is a big deal. You have to identify what your resources are on your small farm or ranch, whatever. Diversity is good, because if one of the revenues that you have coming in on the farm, as we know, they can fluctuate a lot sometimes. Quality, I've always focused on quality on anything that I've done on the farm. I'm not going to try and sell an inferior product to anyone. I'm a little bit on the fussy side about that. I have actually had bulls that I've had sold off the farm, and it come time to put those bulls on the trailer to get them off to their new home. There was something about it I didn't like. I would call the guy that would, and I would call everyone who purchased those bulls, and I'd say, hey, I don't like this bull. I'm not going to sell it to you, and I wouldn't give them a choice. I would say I have these other bulls that are superior to this bull. Come pick them out, or I can pick them out and bring them to you. And the customers were very, very happy that I would do that for them. You know, do you have a niche market? A lot of times in the small farms, you know, our grass-finished beef, that's kind of a niche market. You know, are you raising rabbits? You know, what's your niche market? And we also need to add value to that. You know, we cannot sell grass-finished beef for what you can buy beef for in a sale barn. We have to be able to make a living. And like it or not, marketing is a big deal. As farmers, we can produce things, we grow things, we can make a very quality product, but marketing is one thing that we lack on considerably. And like it or not, in the business model, we have to do marketing. And a lot of times, what dictates what you're doing or what you're producing on your farm is your location. Like myself, I don't have a strong market for grass-finished beef, so we have adapted and went in different directions with our beef cattle. We sell breeding stock. I do sell some hanging beef. You know, if what doesn't, you know, everything's not going to make breeding stock, and you should not try and market all your livestock. If you're in the seed stock business, you shouldn't market everything because it's not all going to make it. So what doesn't make it as breeding stock, we sell it as freezer beef. We don't send any of our beef cattle to the sale barn, because the sale barn, you're just going to lose money. It doesn't matter. Now, if we have a cow that, you know, usually open cows go as whole cow hamburger, but, you know, say there's one that got sick or something like that, then that's an avenue to just basically cut your losses and, you know, get rid of it. Identifying your resources. On our farm, we have a ton of different things that we're doing. Doing the conventional thing when we're making hay and doing all that other stuff, we couldn't be doing what we're doing today. And we wasn't doing what we were doing today. These are primarily the four things that are on our farm. We work with the livestock naturally. We have 70 acres of forest. I live in the hardwood capital of the world. So we manage our forest land for timber. I do work in the shop. Some. And that is, we're going to go into that. And we're also collecting native seeds off the farm and reselling those as well. Here's our livestock. I mean, we have a lot of different things there that we're making money on. I have a lot of folks come up and say, you can't possibly be making a living on your beef cattle, because we do talk a lot about the beef cattle, but some of these other things that we don't talk about. And they're right. I can't make a living just on beef cattle on my farm. But with everything added together, the market, you know, we actually thrive on our farm. We have our cattle, we sell the seed stock, and we sell freezer beef. Our lambs, our sheep, we sell as breeding stock and freezer lamb. We sell hatching eggs and chicks. 25 years ago, I purchased 25 chickens. I paid $625 for those chickens. Everybody thought I was crazy, okay? I got on, at the time, there was a website called EggBid. I would advertise those hatching eggs on egg bid. They'd come up for auction, and oftentimes I'd get $140 a dozen for those eggs. So spending $625 for 25 chickens doesn't look so bad. Guineas, we sell probably close to 1,000 guineas on the farm every year, guinea chicks. Some hatching eggs on the guineas, but it's mainly guinea chicks. And those there are all repeat customers, pretty much. It was said here, I believe it was on the first day, Ryan, he said that you have your repeat customers because they don't know how to take care of their livestock. They take the guineas home, they get them raised out, and the coons get them, so next year they come and buy more off me. That's the way it works. A lot of folks don't know how to take care of their animals, and that's what happens with the guineas. They're supposedly great tick eaters. We haven't had a tick on any of us on my farm this year, or our livestock that I know of. I don't know if it's the guineas or not. I can't honestly say that for sure. Coturnix quail. Coturnix quail you can really flip quickly. Coturnix quail, you hatch a Coturnix quail, it will be laying eggs in 6 weeks. And you can sell, at least up in my area, I can sell all the Coturnix quail chicks that I can produce for about $1.50 a piece on average, sometimes $1.25. And we can put pretty close to 600 quail eggs in our incubator, and we can flip that every 18 days. Hogs, we raise pasture hogs in the summertime. We don't have any farrowing sows. I don't really care for the farrowing hogs out on the farm. We did it. We used to raise mulefoots and large black hogs, but we've kind of switched out, and I found a good source for Berkshires. Berkshire hogs are known for very good marbling and tenderness, so that's what we do. We get Berkshire piglets, and we raise those out during the summer. Now, one of the things that we learned on hogs a long time ago, and you probably should be doing this on your farm. If you haven't experienced this, it's not a very good experience. We had 12 hogs that we raised out one year. We had them all sold. We always try and sell them before we get them. We don't want to get them and then try and sell them. Those 12 hogs, we had them all sold, send them off to the processing to have them harvested. And that particular year, we had 20 halves of hogs in the end that wasn't sold. So that we have 20 halves of hogs on the rail, not sold. So now what do? I got like 3 days. They want to cut these hogs up in 3 days. What do? I ended up basically giving those hogs away just to get rid of them. So whenever you're selling stuff like this on your farm, get a deposit. I made the mistake of not getting a deposit off of these things, and the ones that we didn't sell were new customers, and we tried to explain to them, you have to educate your customers. We try to explain to them that, you need this much freezer space, it's going to cost you this amount of money. This is when they're processing. A lot of them would be like, can you hold on to that for another 6 months? I don't have the freezer space right now. Well, no, when they're ready to harvest, they're ready to harvest. So education, we started back with our honeybees this year. We've been pretty successful with it. We have a hard time in our state marketing like honey, anything that's processed honey. You have to have an inspected kitchen. You got to have inspected facilities to store this. So we can't really sell honey on the farm. But to be adaptive, in the spring of the year, I'll make splits. I'll start splitting the hives up. I'll make as many hives of bees as I can and I'll turn around and sell them basically, I guess you could say, as breeding stock. You can sell a lot of hives of bees and still make as much, if not more money, doing that. And then we have our donkeys. We raise saddle donkeys and guard donkeys. I just got a text this morning from one of our customers that had purchased a donkey from us. It says, Cheyenne is worth her weight in gold. Chased a coyote out of the pasture last night. By the signs of it, it barely escaped with its life. I like to hear reports like that. That's a satisfied customer. That satisfied customer is going to go on to the next person. But I'm not going to sell you a donkey. If you come to buy a guard donkey on my farm, it's going to be what I say it is. And you know, saddle donkeys and good guard donkeys, they're going to cost you a lot of money. But if you come to me, it's going to be what I say it is, and I'm going to stand behind it. We have our timber. The last 3 years, we have not pulled any saw logs out of the woods because of the timber markets have been pretty low. The timber markets are back up now. In my area, I can get $1,400 a thousand for white oak, yellow poplar. Red oak is okay. It's around $700 a thousand. Black cherry is way down. It's the lowest I've seen it in years. It's down around $400 to $500 a thousand. But being that I'm harvesting my own timber, I can go in and harvest specific species that are high in market value and leave the other species alone in the woods. And I can't say I haven't been managing my forest the past 3 years. Yes, I have trees that are mature. They need the saw logs pulled out. But I have other resources. I have lumber. We do mushroom logs. We'll take and cut 4-foot bolts, inoculate those logs, and being that we have to have those inspected kitchens and all that red tape, instead of selling mushrooms, I cut the logs in half and I sell the logs in 2-foot sections to people that want to grow their own mushrooms. You know, just the local guy, you know, they want to grow their own mushrooms, but they don't want to inoculate the logs or go out and collect those logs. So that's a way for me to get away from stuff like that. Firewood, we got tons and tons of firewood on the farm. So I can cut a lot of firewood. I was in the forestry industry, and in a day's time, I can probably cut 40 loads of firewood. I still have all my logging equipment from whenever I was in the woods, but you know, if you have a little small farm tractor, even an ATV, there's arches and stuff that you can get, and it's amazing how much wood you can pull out in a day's time if you just set your mind to it. Now, if you're going to be managing your wood lots, be very, very careful. It's the logging industry is one of the most dangerous jobs in the world. I've had a lot of friends killed in the woods that trees have come back and got them. So if you're not quite sure what you're doing, either go take there's a school, it's called the Game of Logging. I would highly recommend going and taking those classes before you go out there and cut trees down. A lot of times that we'd say when we were in the logging industry, if you have a chainsaw, you're a logger. If you have a skill saw, you're a carpenter. You know, get that schooling. It doesn't cost that much. It's like a 5-day school, but they'll actually teach you how to safely cut down a tree. Oftentimes when folks start cutting trees down, it's not safe. I see it every day, and it's like, I just cringe because somebody's going to get hurt. I do in-shop work. I've found a market for birdhouses. I sell them 50 at a time. Most generally, it costs me $2.50 to make them, and I make a pretty good profit on the birdhouses. those that follow me on YouTube or Facebook, they know that I've developed my water tank, a water tank. It's highly portable. It's a high flow water tank. But they don't want to go through the process of making the components to make that water tank. So as I have time, I will make those components. I'll take those valves, I'll tap them, put that needle valve in it. I'll make the band for on the top, the cage for it, and whenever I send this kit to you, it has all the nuts, all the bolts. The only thing you need to do is drill an inch hole for the valve to go in, and a few quarter-inch holes, and in a little as a half an hour, you're up and going. I do a lot of research and development on the farm, in my shop. I'm in the process, and I don't know, a lot of you've probably seen it if you watch my YouTube. I've designed a fence lifter that actually lifts the fence in the center versus a bat latch that works on the end. One of the problems with the bat latch, if it opens up on the end, half the herd goes through, and then the other half is captured in the paddock that they're in, and at the end of the day, the calves want to tear that fence down. I've had the fence tore out a lot of times using a bat latch type product. So I have developed what I call a fence lifter. It lifts in the center. Now I still have a bunch of bugs to work out of it. I can make it work. It works great for me, but I'm afraid if I sell this product onto the next guy, there's going to be potential problems with it. So I want to kind of get those bugs worked out. So I don't really want to. I got to have it so it's dummy proof. I don't mean that to insult anybody, but even myself, if I forget one of the steps, it gives me a little bit of trouble. And I do a lot of time-saving stuff. Fence jumpers. Fence jumpers for running over top of your poly wires. I may have 8 poly wires set on my farm. It only takes an hour and a half maybe to build a fence jumper. How much time would you save running across those 8 fences? Fence reel winders. Right here, this tool that I'm showing in this picture is a wire hose clamp. Oftentimes when you buy garden hoses, you might as well just buy 2 new ends, because the ends on the garden hoses are going to go pretty quickly. I have never had one of these wire hose clamps leak on me on a garden hose. And they're so strong, and I don't recommend doing this. On a Sunday afternoon, I blew a hydraulic hose one time. I put a barbed fitting in it, used this wire hose clamp, and that actually is still on that hydraulic line. So you know how much pressure a hydraulic line puts out, and it actually is still holding. So, we're doing time-saving stuff, so that makes me have more time available to do other things on the farm. The native seeds we're collecting: cup plant, coneflower, common milkweed, wild bergamot. Just for an example, we're hand collecting this stuff. I don't have equipment going out and doing it. We go out and we hand cut the tops off the plants. And now I have built debearding machines and sifting machines to sift all the chaff and different things out. But like cup plant, I sell that seed for $8 an ounce, and I can go out and collect 10 pounds of cup plant seed in about 2 or 3 hours, and then we'll spend another 2 or 3 hours cleaning it. It turns a pretty good profit. So that's another avenue. Do you have any native plants on your farm that you can actually collect those seeds off of and sell those seeds? Purple coneflower doesn't sell very much. Common milkweed's usually around a little over $100 a pound. Wild bergamot's up around $300 a pound. So, if you've looked at the price of any of these native seeds, they're very, very expensive, but you can hand collect them and make a pretty fair wage. As a farmer, Oftentimes farmers don't want to pay themselves, but your time is worth something, and you got to figure out how much you have to be paid on your farm in order to be profitable. You know, a quality product, as I said before, if I have an inferior animal, now like the native seeds, you can't just go out and collect the native seeds and sell them. You do have to get a permit, and they have to go in for a germination test. So you have to send a sample in for a germination test. It's relatively inexpensive. You have to have certain things listed on the tag. You know, you have to have the germination, the purity, and like the native seeds, you have what they call hard seeded seeds. You know, all that has to be on a label, and it's not that big of a deal. But your quality of product, as I mentioned before, you know, I've pulled bulls out that I didn't like, and I refused to sell them. It didn't matter. If that person still wanted that bull, I would not sell it to them. That bull ultimately would be castrated and sent for beef after a period of time. We normally don't castrate our calves until they're a year old, until we see how the animals are starting to develop into bulls. And we've castrated bulls up to 1,400 pounds. You know, your niche markets, you know, are you able to raise heritage hogs and have them marbled and sent and get a premium for your product? Like, you know, everything that we're doing on our farms, pretty much a niche market. You know, you don't want to send your stuff to the sale barn and get commodity pricing. And you can look into your co-ops. We have a grass-finished beef co-op that just started in our area, and they think that they're doing really well, paying a farmer $1 over commodity price. I can't sell my product for $1 over commodity price and make any money on it. If I do make money on it, it'd be cents, just cents. It's not enough in order to get that farm to survive or thrive, for that matter. You know, added value. I'm finding now with the freezer beef and the freezer lamb, freezer pork that we're selling, people are actually starting to see climate change, and they're looking at the regenerative side of things where, you know, hey, he's making soil, you know, I'm educating the customer, he's making soil, he's doing a really good thing for the environment, he's using less fossil fuel to produce this product, so I am able to sell more freezer beef and freezer lamb and pork because we're producing it regeneratively. And they're also seeing the health benefits of it too. We send, like I said, call cows, open cows for hamburger, and I have people driving in from Washington, D.C., which is 6.5 hours away, and they'll buy 100 pounds of hamburger at a time. And I see this time and time again. A lot of times, you know, we sell 50 to 100 pounds at a time, and people are traveling. I have a guy coming out of Ohio. He travels 5 hours to get 100 pounds of hamburger at a time. Now, I have those folks pick it up at the processing facility because I don't have the licensing and the permitting to bring it onto my farm and then resell it. So you have to be careful with up in my area, I don't know if you're familiar with the Amish guy that's facing $250,000 in fines and jail time because he was selling meat off of his facility without being licensed. You know, the USDA, I think that's going to be, they're trying to make an example out of him, so the small producer, making it a little bit harder for the small producer in order to sell. So you have to be careful with that. You know, like it or not, marketing is the lifeblood of your business. You're going to have to bite the bullet and get out there and market. You know, a lot of farmers see themselves as introverts, and they don't want to be around people and different things like that. I started speaking in 2012, and I was scared to death. I was completely scared to death to get in front of people. I never thought, I forced myself to do it because I seen the potential of perhaps selling more breeding stock off the farm, and it gave me an opportunity to spend time with the folks that want to buy my product. So, if you're wanting to sell freezer beef, you may want to go to certain events in order to get your name out there to sell your product. You need to build relationships. Now, if we sell 5 or 10 pounds of hamburger to somebody, we're not going to follow up on it. But if I have everybody that buys cattle on my farm, I will be calling you a week later asking you how those animals are doing. And if you buy bred heifers from me, I know approximately whenever they're going to calve out. After they're calved out, maybe a week, I'm going to be calling you to make sure that you're satisfied with that product. I'm building relationships with my customers. If there's a problem, I'm going to do everything that I can do to make it right, whether it's my fault or not. Because people talk. They're going to talk to 10 other people. If they're saying bad things, well, I bought a cow from Russ and she had a hard time calving. Whether it was my fault or not, I'm going to try and make it right. They're going to say, well, I bought a cow and it had a hard time calving. Man, it just wasn't a good thing. In communication, you need to be able to communicate with your folks. Online presence. I have an online presence. Can you type your name? I compete with Russell Wilson, quarterback, so you type that in, you're going to get all quarterback stuff. But if you type in if you go to Google, type in Russ Wilson grazing, I'm going to be in the next 20 people that you see. Type in Wilson Land and Cattle Company, I'm going to be the first one that comes up on Google search. How do you do that? Build a simple website. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But you need to be loyal and consistent with your customers. If you're going to have repeat customers and they're purchasing beef off of you, and it doesn't matter how you finish your beef or your lamb, you want to finish it the same way every time. Oftentimes I see folks selling what they're calling finished beef, and what I call finished beef is two different things. So that's two totally different products. But if you have loyal customers and they like what you're producing, you want to be consistent on how that is being produced. You want those repeat customers. You don't want to have to go out and look for customers every time you sell something. You don't want to worry about competition. I don't feel that there's a lot of room for markets. There's a lot of need for the regenerative type products that come off of our farm. So I don't worry so much about competition. I've had folks come to my farm and say, well, this guy down here, he's got a bull he's selling for $500 cheaper. I'll say, go buy that bull for $500 cheaper. We'll see you next year. And that's exactly what happens. I have people, whenever they buy bulls off of me, they'll come back to me and say, well, I bought one off of this person, and then I got to looking around in my pasture field. Well, this bull that I bought off you 7 years ago, he's still here, and he's just kind of there, and he just does his job, and I don't even really notice him. So that's good PR for building a customer base. Competitive with other farmers. I don't try and compete with other farmers. If somebody comes to me and say, well, what do you think of the South Poles? They're good cows. I raise primarily Black Angus. I have a little bit of some with some Wagyu mixed in them. But they come to me and say, hey, I want to put Herefords in my system, or I want to buy Herefords. I'm going to say, well, you need to go to this guy. He has some of the best Herefords in the country. You don't have to be secretive. Have a basic website. You say, well, I can't really build a website if you have and then that usually comes with the older farmers. I have a really hard time with modern technology. Most generally, you have maybe a grandchild or a daughter or son, whatever. You can build a decent website, in a couple hours. I mean, it doesn't, and whenever you go to a person's website, you only want to have 1 or 2 paragraphs on the front of your website. You don't want to have to be scrolling through pages and pages and pages of information, because on average, the person is only going to read the first paragraph, and that's it. So if you keep having all this stuff, there's going to be a lot of stuff that doesn't happen. Now, whenever you're building your website, you need to have a website address that's easily remembered. If you have a website that has a bunch of numbers and letters and stuff like that in it, people aren't going to be able to find it. My website's www.russwilson.net. I mean, that's fairly easy to remember. If you can remember my name and put a .net on it, you got my website. I tried Wilson Land and Cattle, but the one in Virginia that doesn't pay their taxes has that Dominion name. Every year since we've been working under the name Wilson Land and Cattle Company, IRS has contacted us for tax delinquency. And my wife works probably 4 or 5 hours a year just trying to straighten that mess out. Customer service, education. It's very challenging if you're selling freezer beef to somebody that's lived in the city their whole lives, so it's very important to educate those folks. If you don't educate them, there's potentially they're going to come back and be not a happy camper. And sell them what they want. They want quality. They want a quality product. Sell them what they want. You need to be yourself. You need to be consistent, generous, authentic, and most importantly, honest. Has anybody had bad business deals with folks? It happens all the time. Whenever I grew up, a handshake was a binding contract. A man's word was a man's word. This day and age, you need to kind of protect yourself and get those down payments or get those deposits, because you can have a handshake deal and be in the same situation that I was in, having 20 halves of hogs that need sold. So you need to be honest and just watch out for yourself. This was the best thing that ever happened on the farm. That was my last piece of high input equipment going out the driveway. That was where the turning point was that allowed me to put these other different things on my farm. Some of them I don't make a lot of money. It may be a couple $1,000s a year I might make on them. But if you add all of those up, it comes into to be a sizable amount of money. Don't go out buying a bunch of unnecessary things like that big green tractor. That big green tractor is going to cost you a lot of green. Whenever you think you need something for on your farm, is it a need or is it a want? Do we actually really need that tractor in order to survive, or be profitable or productive on our farm. Not in regenerative agriculture. You know, regenerative agriculture really changes things. How much money do we need to make a living? We need to know those numbers. You know, for me, I'm not a rich man. Well, it depends on what the definition of rich is. You know, my wife goes to the grocery store once every 4 months. The rest of the food that we produce, or the rest of the food that we eat, is produced on our own farm. You know, that's consider, or you know, our food cost is, you know, dramatically less. Now, we don't produce that food for free. You know, the beef, the pork, the chicken, the fish we raise in our pond. That stuff isn't free, but it does cost a lot less than what it is in the store. We have our own firewood. You know, we heat with firewood. You know, up where we're at, we heat 7 months out of the year probably. Last night was our first frost. We had our first frost last night. My wife texted me this morning and said it's 34 degrees and there's frost laying in the low spots. So we had our first frost last night. Social media, you don't want to rely just on one source of trying to get, you know, word of mouth. That was probably I can't say it was the wrong thing to do whenever I was a farrier, because I was very, very successful and I had more work and I was turning a lot of work down. You know, word of mouth is probably the basis of your business if you're honest and you treat your customers right. Social media is a big deal, though. I have 2,000 friends on Facebook. Does anybody in here follow me on Facebook? You know, we have quite a bit. Anybody here watch my YouTube channel? Lots of hands. Okay? So social media, you know, I haven't posted a lot on YouTube recently because I've been busy, but I've kind of taken that over onto Facebook, and I try to post 1 or 2 minute video every day on the farm. And I try to include the livestock in those videos so you can physically see what I have. Okay, I may not come out and say that I have this for sale, but you can see that livestock and say, well, you know, I'm going to get into, I want to try and start cattle, or I want to have sheep. He's got some pretty nice sheep. He's got some nice cattle. You know, folks who contact me. Samples. If I have somebody that I think is going to want to buy a quarter of a beef or a hamburger, I'll give them a couple steaks. If I meet somebody and, you know, I talk to them, you know, hey, I got this product, I'm comfortable enough to give that person a pack of steaks or a couple, 2 or 3 pounds of hamburger, because I know that they're going to come and purchase from me. So don't be afraid to do samples. Now, we do classified ads sometimes, but the problem with classified ads, people like to waste your time. In a lot of the classified ads, like Craigslist, you're going to get spammed. You may go through 30 emails just to have one good one. You're going to get a lot of spam and a lot of people that want to try and, it slips me what the terminology is, but you're going to have a lot of people who are going to want to, we were selling guard dogs. Whenever we had the guard dogs on the farm, we'd put them on the classified ads, and we'd have people would say, well, we're going to send you a money transfer, and we're going to have the people come. It was just a scam, somebody trying to steal from you. So we would end up with a lot of that with the classified ads. So we try to stay away from classified ads as much as possible. That's kind of like the last little bit of advertising if we have any advertising to do. So just keep that in mind. If you're going to do classified, you're going to have a lot of people waste your time. Back early on, I would put my cattle on classifieds, and you get the folks that would want to come and buy your cattle by the pound. You'll say, well, market price for bred cows is 50 cents a pound, that's all I can give you. Well, you can't sell those bred cows for 50 cents a pound or whatever market price is. You need to get a premium for your product. Learn modern technology. I know it's very difficult, but, buckle down. Probably I would say 80 to 85% of my business is on texting. There's a lot of times I'll do $20,000 cow sales and never talk to the person on the phone. It's all done through texting. So, I won't meet or talk to that person until they come to the farm to pick those cows up. So, learn how to text. Modern technology is, it can be a good thing, it can be a bad thing, but it seems to be the way things are going. A lot of folks are texting now. Email, most of us all do email now. That seems to be another avenue. But very rarely do I talk to folks on the phone before they come to the farm. It's very, very rare. Now, if I have somebody that's coming a long ways, if I have cattle all over the northwestern United States. If I have people coming, say, from New Hampshire, which is, 1,000 miles maybe to my farm, I'm going to go out, I'm going to take videos, I'm going to take pictures, I'm going to do everything that I can do so they know what they're coming to whenever they come to the farm. But honestly, most of those people have followed me on YouTube or Facebook, and they already know what they're buying. So whenever they get in contact with me, they normally don't want pictures. They don't, they already know. They see what products I have to sell. Summary, what are your resources? You need to identify your resources, and you have to do things that you want to do on your farm, not things that you have to do. Things that you want to do, not things that you have to do, because it's not a job unless you have to do it. The diversity, we have a lot of diversity on the farm. The cattle business might be bad this year, but the sheep business might be good this year. Back early on when we were doing sheep, doing the commodities thing, I took a whole load of Dorset lambs to the auction barn. The truck, I can't remember the amount of lambs that we had on there, but the truck was squatted down. It was a full load. I come home with a check for $55. Yeah, for a whole load of lambs. Tell you what, we took a beating that year in our lambs, and that was the last time we took them to the sale barn. Occasionally we'll send a few, but not very often. Added value, that's where the regenerative, the regenerative part gives you added value. Your marketing, don't be afraid to go out, say you have grass-fed beef. Go out and mingle with the people that you want to sell your grass-fed beef to. I like to sell breeding stock. I'm with folks that potentially have want to buy breeding stock. What's your location? Like in our area, in order for me to sell, I do have a market for some grass-finished beef in my area, but I can go down the road and buy all the beef I want for $2 a pound, and I can't sell my beef for $2 a pound. So I've created a breeding market or a seed stock market because the closest place for me to sell a lot of grass finished beef is 2 hours away. And for me to truck grass finished beef or lamb or pork for that matter 2 hours away is extremely difficult. So you need to kind of be adaptive in your marketing. When everybody's looking for gold, it's a good time to be selling shovels. You know, that's a quote from Mark Twain. I heard that quote early on. That's kind of what I was into whenever I was selling those chicken eggs for $140 a dozen. We also had a herd of Dexters back in Y2K. Remember when all the computers were going to crash and the world was going to come to an end and everybody needed to have a milk cow and a meat cow on the farm? Dexter's was the perfect homesteading animal. So in 2018, I went and I bought myself a herd of Dexters. I made a bunch of money. I could not produce Dexter cattle enough. Now, once Y2K came along, I couldn't give them away. But up until Y2K came, I could move a lot of Dexter cattle, and you could almost ask what you wanted for them. You know, I could sell calves. You know, that's 22 years ago. I could sell Dexter calves for $2,000 a piece. And back 22 years ago, that was pretty good money. So, you know, look for your markets. Don't be afraid to be adaptive. Don't say, okay, well, I only want to do cattle. That's what I wanted to do whenever I started my cattle. I only want to do cows. I don't like sheep. I still don't like sheep, but I can see the value in them. So maybe I do like sheep a little bit. My daughter takes care of the sheep, so I don't have to work with them too much. But we do have a tough flock of sheep. This here's my contact information. You can get a hold of me. I have a YouTube channel. Don't forget to, you know, on YouTube, I struggle with YouTube. I have troubles with YouTube being sustainable. Everybody thinks that they're going to get on YouTube and make a whole bunch of money. You're going to put a lot of hours in. You're going to spend a lot of money on computers, editing equipment, cameras, and for a very small return. I have 5,000 subscribers. I posted my first video August 19th. 3 years ago. I have 179 videos, I believe, on YouTube. I've made less than $2,000. And I can't really correlate where I have sold a lot of extra stuff on my farm. So I'm really struggling to see where YouTube is sustainable. I love to share information and different things like that with folks, but spending 20, 25 hours a week on YouTube, it's really difficult. So I'm not going to give up on YouTube, but we may just go to like maybe one video a month or something like that. Because I do have a lot of good friends that I've met. I've met John off YouTube, basically. Yep, I've met John. You know, he's a good guy. I message him every once in a while. He messages me. Yep. So, and there's a lot of other good folks that I've met on YouTube. A lot of good friends. So, I'm not going to give up on it, but I'm not sure it's going to be the lifeblood of my business. Questions?
All right, questions?
I didn't do that good of a job, did I? Or maybe I did that bad of a job.
Hey, we got one here.
Got a couple.
And we'll get some more.
So after you had the issues with all those hogs on the rail, did you consider just in doing contracts for them before? I mean, that's why I was wondering. The following year, did you just have a contract? Do you sign this for the hog?
For the hogs, what we did for the hogs and what we've done every year after that, we'll get a hold of our past customers, which we have people that buy off us every year. We'll get a hold of everybody, and everybody that has been interested. My wife keeps a list, and everybody that's interested, whenever we go to pick little pigs up, we'll say, okay, we're going to get our little pigs. They'll be finished at this date because, you know, we have problems right now getting harvest dates on our livestock. I'll pick my little pigs up and have a harvest date at 6 months. And what I do is we'll get a hold of those folks and say, okay, this is what we're doing. This is when the pigs are going to be ready. I need a $50 deposit. So that's what I do with the hogs and even the beef. Everything we sell on the farm that's going to take a period of time for folks to pick it up, I collect a deposit. You cannot not collect a deposit. Because, as I said before, I grew up in the age when handshake was a binding contract. It's no longer a binding contract. Yes, ma'am.
2 questions.
Yes.
Just estimates on your time investment. First one, I appreciate what you said about YouTube. A lot of people don't realize how time consuming making videos is. For your ideal video that you put out, about how much time goes into what someone sees? So like if you're doing a 3-minute, a 5-minute, like of that 20 to 25 hours a week, what would you say?
For a YouTube video you're talking?
Yeah, we see 3 to 5 minutes or 10 minutes or however long what.
It doesn't take long to record the video.
Right.
I mean, and YouTube has certain criteria. That video needs to be at least 8 minutes long in order for it to even be considered to, it has to be a certain length. 8 minutes is the deadline or the cutoff in order to make any amount of money being monetized. And my channel's monetized. I have over 1,000 subscribers, and you have to have 4,000 watch hours a year. But your videos need to be 8 minutes long. So normally I try to keep my videos anywhere from 8 minutes. I think I have them up to 30 minutes, but I try to keep them between 8 and 15 minutes. You go out and you record it. You just explain what you do and different things. If you've seen my videos, and then you may record probably for a 20-minute video, you record 30 minutes worth of video, okay? And then you take that back and you put it in your expensive computer, because a normal computer is not gonna edit videos for you. You need a fast computer, okay? So you take that footage back, you put it in your computer, you put it on a program that costs you X amount of dollars a month, depending on what your editing program is. And then you had all the cost of your videoing equipment. But the time it takes, I figure it takes me anywhere from 10 to 15 hours to make one video. So it can be very time consuming.
And the other question was on the education of the customers for them buying your beef.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say, like for the average customer, suburban housewife or whoever it is, how much time you have to spend helping them understand like finished weight, hanging weight, or like just the sort of knowledge base you have to establish in them?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to invest a certain amount of time selling a half or a quarter of a beef. I have a friend that sells at the farmers markets, and he sells what he calls parts and pieces. He figures it cost him 30 hours to sell one beef. Now, he gets a premium, but it takes him 30 hours from the time he takes it off the farm to the processing plant, haul it back, put it in the freezer, haul it to the farmer's market, and then spend 5 minutes with each customer. Myself, to sell a half or a quarter of a beef, it probably, with all the people that you talk to, you're not going to sell meat to everybody. So you're looking at probably 2.5 hours of time spent to sell a quarter to a half a beef.
That's why the repeat customers is about.
Absolutely. You need those repeat customers because they're already educated. They just pick the phone up and say, hey, and I actually have customers, they'll buy a quarter of a beef and they'll say, I want one at this date, because they know how long that quarter of beef is going to last them. They'll say, okay, I'll need another one, in 4 months or 5 months or whatever time it is. Now, another thing that I wanted to talk a little bit about grass-finished beef. A lot of folks try to finish through the wintertime, and if you're finishing grass finishing beef through the wintertime, you know, as Jim said, they need dairy quality feed, basically, in order to put pounds on them. And that's going to cost you a lot of extra money putting dairy feed through the wintertime. So we'll only sell beef through, you know, I don't sell them early spring. I'll start in July. I sell beef from July to December. It's kind of like calving. The mentality for me is it's almost like trying to calve in the wintertime to try to finish beef. So, you know, now if you had a farm store where you needed to put beef in those freezers or whatever to sell on a daily basis, I can see where that's needed. But myself, I would prefer to sell through the time that whenever I can finish those animals versus have to pay that extra premium on feed.
Okay, our lunch is ready for us, and if you want to, we can have maybe one more question, or if you want to go eat. But they're ready for us
somebody
right
had
now.
a question
Does
over
somebody have
here.
a question here?
I had a question, but it was just about, I was just curious when you said that you took a load of lambs and you got $55 from, what year was that? Do you remember?
That would have been, I believe it was in 2010
Okay.
or 2011. Yeah,
I was just curious.
yeah.
All right, Russ, thank you very much.
Thank you.